My name's Nathan, I'm 24, and I graduated from medical school 2 weeks ago. It should have been the happiest day of my life. The kind of day you picture when you're pulling all-nighters in the library, skipping parties, and wondering if the stress is going to cave your chest in before finals due. But instead of standing in that crowd and feeling proud, I felt empty. Because everyone showed up to my graduation, except my parents. It was a sunny afternoon in Boston, the kind that makes the Charles River sparkle like a movie set. My classmates were hugging their families, taking photos with their professors, and popping bottles of cheap champagne. I stood near the back of the crowd, clutching my diploma in a navy blue folder, waiting for someone to shout my name or wave from the bleachers. Nothing. I checked my phone twice. No texts. No missed calls. Just silence. So I called. It rang 5 times before my mom answered, her voice chipper and full of background noise. Laughter, waves, music. Hi, sweetie. Is everything okay? I stared at the phone like it had just betrayed me. Oh yeah? Just wondering where you guys are. Oh, right, she said, like she'd forgotten something trivial, like picking up milk. We're on a cruise with your brother. He just got that new job offer, remember? We wanted to do something special to celebrate. I paused. Just let that sink in. My parents had skipped my medical school graduation to go on a cruise with my brother. My younger brother, Brian, who'd landed a mid-level sales job at a tech startup 2 weeks prior and had been bragging about it like he'd been named CEO of Google. I didn't even yell. Didn't cry. I just smiled. That kind of tight-lipped smile you give when you're trying to hold in something sharp. Then don't bother showing up to my future either, I said, and hung up. I didn't hear from them the rest of the day. Not even a text. When I got back to my apartment that night, still in my dress, shoes, and tie, I took the box out of my closet. It was something I'd put together months ago, during one of those long, introspective nights when you realize you've been putting more into a relationship than the other person ever has. Inside the box were copies of every acceptance letter I'd ever received. Undergrad, med school, residency. Each one I'd excitedly scanned and sent to my parents over the years, only to get back lukewarm responses or sometimes nothing at all. There were printouts of the emails I'd sent when I made the dean's list, when I passed step 1, step 2. I even included a birthday card I'd made them 1 year by hand because I couldn't afford a real gift. They never opened it. Taped to the top of the box was a note I'd written last year, after Brian got his third car in 5 years from them while I was still taking the bus to rotations. It said, "If you ever wonder why I stopped trying to earn your approval, read everything inside. Out loud. Then maybe you'll hear what I've been screaming in silence for years." I paid for overnight shipping and mailed it to their house the following week. Never got a response. Not even a delivery confirmation. I figured they threw it out. But 2 weeks after graduation, there was a knock at my door. I was in the middle of reheating leftover Thai food when I opened it and saw my dad standing there, holding the box. He looked older, not in the usual way either. Like the kind of tired you get when something finally catches up to you after chasing it for years. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes red-rimmed and glassy. I didn't know, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what? He lifted the box and whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I just pointed to the note inside and said, "Go ahead. Read it out loud." My dad didn't move at first. He just stood there in the doorway, hands wrapped tight around the corners of the box like he was holding something fragile and dangerous all at once. His lips pressed into a thin line, the kind he used to make when he'd get a bill he didn't want to pay, or when Brian got caught sneaking out and he had to pretend to be the tough parent for 5 minutes before caving. I stepped aside, letting the silence stretch between us like a taut wire, and eventually he walked in, slow and hesitant. He sat at my small dining table, the same table where I'd eaten countless microwave dinners alone while studying for the MCAT, the same one they never visited because they were always too busy or already had plans. He placed the box down in front of him and opened it. I watched his hands shake slightly as he unfolded the first acceptance letter, my scholarship offer from NYU, the one I turned down because it didn't make financial sense at the time. Then came the congratulatory email from Johns Hopkins and the one from my current hospital offering me a residency slot after graduation. I had highlighted sentences in yellow, underlined phrases like "top candidate" and "we're thrilled to offer you." He kept pulling out pages, one by one, like they were evidence in a case he didn't realize he was on trial for. He didn't speak, just nodded slightly at each document, lips moving silently as he read. And then, finally, he got to the card. The one I made for their anniversary when I was in med school, all handmade construction paper and handwritten words because I couldn't afford anything else. I sat across from him, arms crossed, heart pounding, not out of anger, but from something colder, emptier. A part of me wanted him to cry, to break down, to say, "I'm sorry," and mean it. But he didn't cry. He just looked up and said, "I didn't know you felt this way." I laughed. It wasn't loud or bitter, more like an exhausted breath with a laugh stuck to it. "How could you not?" I asked. "Every time Brian did something mediocre, you threw a party. When I passed step 2, one of the hardest exams in medicine, I got a cool, buddy text and radio silence for a week. When I made the dean's list 3 years in a row, Mom said, 'Well, that's what we expect from you.' Not 'good job.' Not 'we're proud of you.' Just expectations." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I went on. "You threw him a backyard barbecue when he got hired to sell insurance. A full-blown celebration. But when I matched into one of the best internal medicine programs on the East Coast, you told me you'd try to make it to the white coat ceremony, and then never showed up. You always had a reason, and it was always about Brian." Dad finally cleared his throat. "He's needed more help." "No," I said, sharp this time. "He's needed more attention. There's a difference. And you gave it to him, every time, even when he didn't ask. Even when I was drowning, when I could have used a ride or a hot meal, or just someone to say they were proud of me. You were busy helping him move into another apartment or giving him another emergency loan you knew he'd never repay." I leaned forward. "Do you even remember when I called you after Mom missed my white coat ceremony?" He blinked. You were in New York, right?" "Boston," I said flatly. "I told you the date 6 times. She said she forgot." I gave up trying after that. There was a pause, the kind of pause that lasts just long enough for the gravity of things to settle in, but not long enough for anyone to really absorb them. He finally picked up the note I'd taped to the top, unfolded it, and read it aloud. His voice was low, and each word came out like he was biting off a piece of glass. "If you ever wonder why I stopped trying to earn your approval, read everything inside. Out loud. Then maybe you'll hear what I've been screaming in silence for years." He set the note down and looked at me, but I didn't look away this time. I wanted him to sit in it, to really feel what years of being overlooked, dismissed, and set aside felt like. "I didn't realize we made you feel so invisible," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. My hands were clenched under the table. Because the truth is, I didn't feel invisible. I felt deliberately ignored. Like they chose not to see me. Like my accomplishments only mattered if they fit their narrative. That Brian was the one who needed help, and I was the one who could take care of myself, so they didn't have to bother. "Maybe you didn't mean to," I said finally. "But it happened anyway." He stared at the table for a long time. Then, without a word, he pushed the box slightly toward me and stood up. "Your mother should have come. We both should have. I'll tell her that." I didn't respond. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, square envelope. "This came last week," he said. "We thought it was junk at first, but it's from the hospital." I took the envelope slowly. It was addressed to me, but my old home address was scratched out and forwarded to my apartment. Inside was a card, thick paper, embossed seal from my residency program. I opened it. Inside was a short note from my program director. "Nathan, thank you for your incredible dedication and leadership. You've been selected as the incoming chief resident. We can't wait to see how far you'll go." My dad read the message over my shoulder, then just said, "Chief resident?" I nodded once. "Yeah." And that's when he said it. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at him, the envelope still in my hands. And I said, "Because I wanted to see if you'd find out on your own." He nodded slowly, then took a step back toward the door. I watched him go, unsure of whether he felt ashamed, guilty, or just overwhelmed. Maybe all three. But he didn't leave. Not yet. What he did next changed everything. He didn't speak for a while. He just stood by the door, hand resting on the handle, like he was weighing whether or not he had the right to say anything more. His shoulders rose with a deep breath, the kind you take when you're about to say something uncomfortable. Something you've rehearsed in your head, but no version of it ever sounds quite right when it leaves your mouth. "I know I haven't earned the right to ask this," he said finally, turning to face me again. "But is there still a way to fix this?" The question didn't land softly. It came down like a weight, not because I hadn't thought about it before. I had, countless times, but because I honestly didn't know the answer. There were years of silence packed into my chest, years of missed calls and uncelebrated milestones, and all of that couldn't be undone with a box of letters and one heavy conversation. I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain. It was starting to drizzle outside, a thin mist catching the orange glow of the streetlights. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, older than I remembered, tired in a way that doesn't show up in photos. I stopped trying to fix this a long time ago, I said quietly, because it was always one-sided. I'd call, you'd be busy. I'd invite, you'd make excuses. After a while, you learn not to expect anything. That's the only way it stops hurting. He nodded slowly, his face pale. I just thought you were doing so well. You didn't need anything. That line, you didn't need anything. I've heard it so many times from them, it's practically become a family motto. As if being self-reliant disqualified me from affection. As if my independence made me undeserving of attention. I needed a dad, I said. Not a bank account. Not advice. Just a dad. Someone to show up. Someone who gave a damn when I wasn't doing well. And someone who cared when I was. He walked back to the table, sat down again, and reached for something in the box. It was the hospital brochure from my interview day, creased and marked up with handwritten notes I'd made in the margins. He turned it over and read a scribble I'd written across the back. Hope they see me. Hope I belong. He set it down and looked at me. You always belonged. I don't know how I missed it. You didn't miss it, I said flatly. You ignored it. That landed harder. He winced like the words physically stung. For a moment, I almost regretted saying it so bluntly, but then I remembered the phone call on graduation day. The cruise. The laughter. My mom's voice, so breezy, so casual, like it hadn't occurred to her that this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment for me. I remembered standing alone in a crowd of hugging families, clapping hands, and knowing that the one face I was scanning the crowd for wasn't coming. Your mom, he began, and then stopped. What about her? I asked. He hesitated. She didn't think you'd want her there. That stopped me. What? He looked uncomfortable. She said you've always seemed distant, like we were just a burden to you. She thought maybe you didn't want us to come. I couldn't help but laugh, bitter and tired. She got that from me? After she bailed on every important moment of my life for Brian's latest crisis or spa trip or whatever. I stopped calling because she never listened. And now she thinks I was the one pushing her away? He rubbed his face with both hands, like he was trying to wipe off the conversation. I don't know, Nathan. I think maybe we both just got used to Brian needing more. And we assumed you didn't need anything, that you had it all together. Do you know what that feels like? I asked, stepping back toward him. To spend your whole life being punished for being the one who has it all together? You don't get praise, you don't get support, you get expectations. And when you meet them, no one claps. And when you exceed them, they raise the bar. But if you fall, even once, you're a disappointment. He didn't answer. I could see his jaw tighten. His eyes were wet again. We sat in silence for a long moment. The rain was steady now, tapping against the window like fingers. I could hear the slow tick of the clock on the wall behind me, counting down something I didn't fully understand. Maybe patience, maybe time, maybe the last few ounces of hope I had for this relationship. Finally, he reached into his coat again, and this time, he pulled out something I didn't expect. A photo. It was old, faded and creased, but I recognized it immediately. It was from my 8th grade science fair. I was standing next to my project about antibiotic resistance, wearing an oversized button-up shirt and a shy grin. And next to me, in the photo, were both of my parents, arms around me. I found this last week, he said softly. I forgot we ever took it. You were so proud that day. I stared at the photo. I remembered that day too, not just because I won second place, but because it was the last time they came to one of my events without Brian dragging them along. The last time it felt like I was the priority. I want to be better, he said. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll try, if you'll let me. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. I looked down and felt my stomach tighten. It was my mom. A text. Dad told me everything. Please pick up if I call. We need to talk. I looked at my dad. He was watching me, waiting. For what? I wasn't sure. Forgiveness, permission, maybe a sign that it wasn't too late. But I wasn't sure yet. Because what I said next would change everything. I didn't reply to the text. Not right away. I stared at it, read it again, then flipped my phone over so I wouldn't have to look at it. My dad was still watching me, patient but expectant, like a man who knew he'd already used up more than his fair share of chances and was now waiting to see if he'd be offered one more. Do you know what the worst part of all this is? I said after a long pause. He shook his head silently. It's not the missed events or the excuses or even the way you always made Brian feel like the golden child, I said. It's the fact that you thought I'd just keep accepting it, that I'd always be the one who understood, the one who made space, the one who put his needs last. You didn't think I'd ever stop trying. And when I did, it shocked you. My dad's eyes dropped. He didn't argue. He didn't deny it. That silence was its own kind of confession. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water, partly to stall, partly because I needed something to do with my hands. My reflection caught in the microwave door, same tired eyes, same clenched jaw. I didn't recognize myself sometimes. I looked worn, like someone who had built a life out of hard work but had no one to share it with. Not really. I didn't come here to make excuses, he said behind me. I just wanted to be here. For once. I turned around. Why now? He blinked. What? Why now? I asked again. You ignored every major moment for years. Why show up now? Because of guilt? Because of the box? He hesitated. Because of the silence. When you told us not to bother showing up to your future, it hit me. I didn't think you meant it. But then the box came, and I realized we weren't in your life anymore. At all. I walked back over and sat down across from him again. You were never really in it. He nodded once, solemnly. That's fair. There was a long pause. Then he said, she wants to see you. I didn't have to ask who she was. The word alone felt heavy, complicated. My mother. The woman who had once held me through the flu in middle school, who taught me how to tie my shoes, who then, at some point, decided that Brian's messy orbit demanded all her gravity. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year, hadn't spoken to her since Christmas when she called to ask if I'd help Brian cover a security deposit. Not to wish me happy holidays. Not to ask about my rotations. Just a favor for him. Again, I don't know if I want to see her, I said. She's never apologized. Not once. I think she wants to, he said. She's just proud, stubborn, and scared that if she tries now, it'll be too late. I sipped my water. It might be. Another silence stretched between us, the kind that holds 100 unsaid things. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Nathan, please. Just talk to us. I know we failed you. I read it. Read it twice. And something in me cracked. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a loosening. A softening of that cold, hard knot that had lived in my chest for years. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I had to face it. I couldn't keep dragging this weight behind me. I'll come by, I said finally, quietly. Tomorrow. But if she starts defending herself or blaming me, I'm walking out. He nodded quickly. Of course. I understand. He stood slowly, as if unsure whether he should hug me or just leave quietly. I didn't offer a hug, and he didn't force it. He picked up the empty box and tucked the old photo into his coat pocket. When he got to the door, he turned back one last time. You're a good man, Nathan. I'm sorry we didn't help you become him. I didn't respond, just nodded once. The door closed behind him. The next day, I pulled into my parents' driveway for the first time in nearly 2 years. The house looked the same. Beige paint, worn-out shutters, a lopsided mailbox Brian had broken while backing out too fast a few summers ago. I parked, cut the engine, and just sat there for a minute. Breathing. Bracing. When I knocked, my mom answered. She looked older, too. But not in the way you hope your parents will age. Peacefully, gracefully. No, this was the brittle kind of aging. The kind that sets in when regret takes up residence. Her hair was tied back. Her hands wrung nervously. Nathan, she said, almost a whisper. Hi. She stepped aside to let me in. The living room was quiet. No TV on. No smell of coffee or candles like there used to be. It felt still. Uncertain. We sat at the dining table. Her eyes scanned my face like she was trying to read a language she'd forgotten. I'm sorry, she said before I could even sit fully. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I nodded. Good start. She let out a breath. I think I convinced myself for years that you didn't need me. That you were already so strong. So capable. And your brother, he always needed more. And I let that blind me. I'm not saying it was fair. I'm saying it was a mistake. A long pause. Not a mistake, I said. A choice. You chose him over me. Again and again. She nodded, tears brimming. You're right. I did. And I was wrong. For once, she didn't try to explain or justify. She just sat with it. I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, she said. But I hope, someday, maybe we can rebuild something. Anything. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I just looked at her. This woman who had meant everything to me once, and then slowly, piece by piece, had become a stranger. I don't know what that looks like, I said honestly. But showing up today is something. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and tried to smile. Do you want to stay for dinner? I stood. Not yet. But maybe next time. That was 3 months ago. Since then, things have been tentative. We're not a Hallmark family now. But my parents have shown up. They came to the white coat dinner I hosted for my new residents. They listened. They asked about my schedule, brought me food once when I was pulling overnight shifts. They even called, not to ask for something, but just to talk. Brian, unsurprisingly, wasn't thrilled. He called me dramatic, said I was trying to punish everyone for not worshiping my every achievement. I didn't even get mad. I just blocked his number. I don't owe him anything. Not anymore. As for me, I finally feel lighter. Not because everything is perfect, but because I stopped carrying the burden of always having to prove myself. I stopped chasing love from people who didn't offer it freely. And that's the thing about family. Sometimes, the only way to heal is to let them feel your absence. I graduated med school alone, but I started my residency with my head held high. Not because they were finally watching, but because I knew I was worth watching all along.